Okay, we are going live, and I am going to add our special guest here. We're going to speak with Alissa, who has postural orthostatic tachycardic syndrome, or POTS. And you don't want to miss this interview. I think it's going to be great. And I see you, Alissa. I'm going to add you in here. And by the way, my name is Julie Hirschberg. I'm a neurologic physical therapist, the owner and founder of Re+active Physical Therapy and Wellness in the Los Angeles area, which is where Alissa joined us for an integrated program. And I'm so excited. And her experience in doing an integrated program. So I just invited you on here, Alissa. Hopefully this works. I'm always crossing my fingers. And it worked.
Hi.
Hi. Hi, Alissa. I haven't seen you since we crossed paths in the gym one day. Great to see you. Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah. And like always, people just love hearing stories.
Yeah.
You know, because I'm sure you do as well. I love hearing from people and what they've been through and what they're doing now. And I wonder if you would start there, maybe talking a little bit about what was happening for you before you came out to Re+active.
Yeah, sure. You can hear me okay, right?
Yeah.
Just making.
Yeah, good.
So, before I came to Re+active, I had been sick for almost a year. So I got sick June of 2023. And I had kind of like run through everything that I knew within my toolbox. You know, I'm a physician myself, but nothing in the realm of POTS. You know, I'm an ICU doctor, and you know, I knew about it, but not as much as I know now. So I kind of ran all my resources that I had locally where I live, and I just was like, I need something different. Like, I need something new. I was really not making any progress, and I just was like, there's got to be something else. And I think I heard about Re+active from actually a couple of friends who, one lives in Australia, and yeah, she connected to Molly through the concussive world. And so that's how, and actually then my physical therapist separately, she's a member of Your Brain Bites.
Yes.
And he was like, yes, you need to go to Re+active. Like, you have to go. And I was also looking to get out of Phoenix for the summer because it's, I mean, everyone knows it's 110 plus. Not, as you know, is not good for people with POTS. So, yeah, I think I was just at a place where I was like not making any progress, and I needed a new way. And the other thing that I was finding is, like, I was trying all the protocols, you know, like the standard exercise protocols that they hand you, and I found that I was getting worse because I think I just didn't realize the importance of pacing at that point. And you know, there's so much nuance to it. It sounds so simple. It's like, yeah, just go exercise and it'll get better. But like, it's just, there's so much more to it. And everybody, even though, you know, POTS is, there's a general diagnosis of POTS, everyone always has, you know, all these comorbid conditions with it. And so everyone is sort of different in that respect. Like, some people have FND and POTS, and some people, you know, it's just like, you cannot just throw one protocol. I've learned at someone, which is not something I knew beforehand, you know. So
yeah, I didn't either. Alyssa, like many of us in healthcare, one maybe hadn't even heard of this. This wasn't taught in school.
yeah.
And then I think not until I saw or worked with a bunch of different people did I also realize the protocols that are out there, like, they need finessing, they need individualization. And I mean, I would imagine you were trying all of the things. And tell me, like, where were you finding yourself just kind of functioning in your day to day? Like, where were you kind of getting stuck?
I mean, everything, I would say. Like, even just every time I stand up off the couch, it's just like, So it gets frustrating because you're just like every single time I feel terrible. Every single thing, chores. I had tried to bring my dog out to live with me, and it was just like way too much. Even with hiring dog walkers and like having people help me, it was just like too much. Just everything. Like even driving long distances, traveling at all. I would just say like I was not thriving. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and you wanted to
Yeah,
thrive. Of
want
course.
to. Yes, all of us
Yeah.
want
And make it through your
Yeah.
day, right? At least. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
my ultimate goal is to be well enough to go back to being a clinician, but you know,
yeah.
it just seemed so impossible at that point. And
Mhm.
yeah, that's kind of why I was like, I got to try something different. I got to
Yeah.
switch up the environment, try something different rather than like continuing to like hammer these things that were clearly not working. So that's where I was at that point.
Yeah, yeah. And so you made you made a trek. And as you said, you had different folks. I know who Emily, is it Emily?
Yeah.
Yeah, in Arizona. So you had some great
Yes.
therapy. And but you were looking for something different. And I mean, obviously you came here and had an integrated treatment approach. And I'm wondering what drew you to that team approach?
Well, it's something that I knew, like being a healthcare provider myself, I'm like, that's the dream, right? With
Mm,
everything should be like that. It's not, but it should be, right? Where like everybody's talking to each other
yeah,
because we know that works,
yeah.
like when communication is good, when, you know, people have a cohesive plan, we know that people do better. Uh,
Hmm.
so I just knew, like, first of all, I was kind of tired of managing myself because you're right. Emily, my PT, is really great here. But the problem is that all of my pieces were separate and I was having to back my own healthcare.
Yeah,
And I'm pretty good at it, but also like you have a lot of blind spots.
right,
You really do. I think
right.
I'm good, and then I realized like, no, I really had no idea where the deficits were.
Mm,
Sometimes I do, but you just can't see everything. Uh,
mm-mm,
and so that I knew that like it would take a lot of stress off me to stop managing my own care.
mm.
And I I feel like since the beginning that has been such a huge stressor for me. Like and I can't stop doing. It's very hard for me to like take my hands off the wheel just because of like the way I've been trained and who I am. And so I was really looking forward to that, like, brain turn off and someone else someone else do this, the thinking.
Yeah, it's a lot of details to manage information from multiple sources and to kind of coordinate that communication.
Yeah.
Um, it's
Well, I think the other thing too is that as I've gotten deeper into this illness, you realize that not everyone knows what they're doing. And it's not because the intention isn't there. It's just like they don't see it or they don't get training on it. I myself didn't like, spend a whole lot of time training about these conditions. And so it just felt like sometimes I would go to places and like mention different symptoms or different like problems I was having. It was just like crickets, like, or like maybe you're just stressed out and I'm like, oh, no. So I was really looking for like an environment where like I would trust that they knew what they were doing with this
Mhm.
specifically, and um that like, yeah, I could just do the work, and like that was something I really needed, I think.
Yeah, yeah, to have a
Mm-hmm.
guide, someone that's showing you the way. And somebody actually asked here in the comments, how long were you at Reactive?
I Well, I originally was supposed to do 6 weeks, and then I was like, I'm gonna stay the whole summer. So I was 12 weeks total, the
It
whole.
was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. That's what I when I went back through, and I think I maybe met you in the middle
Yeah.
of it,
Yeah.
because I think maybe you had gone down to watch some volleyball, or we're talking
Yeah,
about
the
that,
man,
right?
yeah, it was in Manhattan Beach, right? Or no,
Yeah,
Hermosa.
or Hermosa. It was one of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so so yeah, so you had a Southern California summer for sure. And what are some of the things that you have changed for you since that time?
Oh, well, I think a lot of things. Um, I think, um, one thing is that I was not pacing myself very well.
Mm,
And so now I think I have a pretty good handle on how to do that. And like not forcing, but just like making sure that I take breaks in my day rather than like burn myself out all
mm,
up front and then I don't have energy to do anything else. Like I kind of learned how to do that.
mm.
I would say that my sleep is a lot better, which is like a huge thing for me. It's still not perfect, but
Yeah.
it's like better. Um, and then I understand now what I need to do to build strength and endurance.
Mm,
That's huge. Like I'm definitely, like not to my end goal, but I have seen some gains in strength and like, that was really, really important to me. And I would
mm.
say I don't feel like death when I stand up anymore.
Oh, okay, that's big.
Yeah.
Alyssa.
I'm still working on like, standing up for long periods of time, but uh it's not like, just getting up to go to the bathroom is not going to kill me. So
Mhm.
I think, and that, like, even those small things like 5% or 10% is so amazing. Like, I'm so grateful for it.
Mhm.
And also because then you can kind of see, okay, so like maybe the end goal isn't impossible. And to like hear people say that to me over and over again, like it's not impossible that you could go back to being a doctor eventually,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
because that wasn't what I was really hearing. I was hearing it from my physical therapist here, but not
Mhm.
everyone else. And so, yeah, I think I have like a direction, which is really nice. And I would say like it was interesting to me to see how, because, like muscle doesn't build for what, 2 months or something like that.
Right.
But it was really cool to see how like once you just activate that pathway, it turns back on, which
Mhm.
is really cool because I mean, I spent a year pretty much on the couch. And so it was hard for me to get back into like that kind of movement. I
Mhm.
love it, but it was hard.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's hard to it's very easy to overdo
Yeah.
and then just not make that
Yeah.
progress. So it sounds like, and that's the beauty, that you could do 12 weeks. Somebody else said 12 weeks at a reactive, what a blessing.
Yeah.
Because you could, and I'm sure, because every program I've ever been in, you end up finding that line, like oh, that was too much, that was too little, like
Yeah.
and you and I even chatted at the very end after the very last exercise
Yeah.
test, right? Like, oops, that might have been too much. But
But
those are actually really good opportunities to know what's possible.
yeah. And I think like it was kind of cool. I thought about it in this way. I was like, well, I know that if the building was burning down, I could get down the stairs. And I don't know. I know that's like kind of morbid to think about, but it
No.
just, I could do it. I shouldn't do it, but
Right.
all the time, but I could.
Yeah.
So I liked having that thought because all year I was just kind of like, I can't, I can't, I can't, I can't. Whereas now it's like, yeah, you could, but you're going to have to pace it and maybe in like 3 months or something like that. So
Yeah. 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 That is, I mean, such a shift from I can't to I could, and here are the things that I know now about my brain and body that I need to do
Yeah.
to get there. And even if it might take a long time, because I think that is something, and somebody else commented here, pacing is so important. It's when you have POTS, it's not an overnight like phenomenon. It just isn't. It's, I mean, and you know, as a clinician, it's your cardiovascular system, it's your nervous system. It just takes a really long time.
Yeah. Like a surprise, you know, and it's funny for me,
Surprisingly,
people like turning around, you know, in a couple days if they're going to turn around, but this is like a really long haul, you know?
yeah.
So learning the patience. And I think the OT part really helped me with that, that mindset switch a little bit. Like they really confronted me on like a lot of things that I was sort of avoiding mentally, I think. So that was really good. And then a huge piece for me was the yoga too, the grounding. I really love the yoga.
Yeah, yeah. So you kind of had all of the pieces of the team, right? So PT, OT, psychology,
Yeah.
yoga, and some of it a little more spread out too, so that the intensity is not quite as intense. Um, and so you mentioned OT, yoga with a lot of the grounding, and our yoga therapists are so good with the autonomic nervous system too.
Yeah.
And what were some of the pieces in the other therapies that were kind of some of your favorite things?
I was surprised how much like in OT we learned a lot about like sensory tools. And there was one that I found myself, I love the clay molding. I was like so surprised because I just haven't, you know, like with my career, I've just been so like, you know, single-minded and really haven't done all these other hobbies on the side. And I was like, wow, I really enjoy this. It like is really calming to me. And, you know, it gives my hands something to do. And it like took me out of my head, you know, which is like a lot of my main challenge is like I need to like get out of that predictive brain and, you know, these patterns of thinking. And so it was really great for that. So I was surprised at how much I liked the sensory stuff because it seems like, oh, I'm 40 years old. I don't, what am I doing? Like playing with the, you know, clay, but I don't know. It works.
Yeah,
So as
yeah.
the yoga, I wasn't that surprised that it did that for me because I used to do a lot of yoga. This is a little bit different, but it's I wasn't that surprised that I liked it so much
Yeah,
because I knew.
yeah, yeah. You bring in such like a nice part of that kind of like getting lost in play.
Yeah,
It's something that like we find in our 40s or 50s, or I mean, even in our 20s, we're driven and it's hard outside of maybe some of our recreational high intensity activities sometimes, which are not like attainable with POTS or some other disorders,
yeah,
that it's it's something that we need, but it's really hard to kind of rediscover that. I'm so glad you said that because I also think that is a little bit of like our OT specialty.
yeah,
They find it's not like just throwing games at you. It's really discovering what really resonates with you
yeah,
and your system and
yeah.
yeah.
We tried a lot of things, and I was just like, "This is ridiculous." But then when you're playing with it, you're like, "Oh, but I like it. It's great."
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Oh gosh, that makes me so happy,
yeah,
Alyssa. I spent like 3 hours making bracelets the other day with my daughter, and I was like, why don't I do this more often? But I thought about you with the, like it was like with my hands and just things I don't normally
yeah,
do. That is so great. And one of the things that you mentioned was like one of the reasons you came was to kind of have this team. And I'm wondering what specifically you found in having the team approach.
oh, I mean everything. Like I said, the biggest thing was that as soon as I arrived, I like knew that the whole team knew what they were talking about. It is like that feeling you get with a clinician, a new clinician of immediate trust.
Mm-hmm.
because you just can tell when someone knows what they're talking about. Especially if people have had this for a while. I mean, even more than me, they know when people know what they're talking about. And so like, I just had that immediate trust, and it was so calming, because I've definitely walked out of other appointments where like I am not calm at all, you know. And so that was a big thing. And I really loved that it was like very clear from day one that they were all talking. Like they, you know, even just from like little comments like, oh, I heard that you got to go to the beach this weekend, and like, how did that go? And like, I could just tell that between the physical therapist, because I had two physical therapists,
Right.
that they were working together on each other's strengths, and like making sure that we hit all the different areas that I needed to hit. Like for example, she's like the neuro queen.
Yes.
And so she was really great at like helping me figure out the vestibular piece. Like I, you know, a lot of dizziness that I had, and working on different creative ways of like troubleshooting that, which I hadn't done before. And then Harrison was like, you know, he was like the strength builder, like, but also really creative, you know, like if I would say something like, man, I would love to like someday be able to paddleboard, or like, you know, walk my dog. And we would just come up with different things that might simulate that. And so it was just really clear that they were talking, and that we weren't reinventing the wheel every single visit. And just like when you have a team of people, and you know, people are very smart, but like you kind of get like sidetracked, you know, or like a one track mind. And when you have different people coming up with different ideas, like it's always better. So I don't know, it just felt like I was in really good hands, you know.
Yeah. It's like having like a 10th brain in the room when everybody comes together. I mean, I'm a part of those team meetings, and it's always just like feels a little magical sometimes, because there might be like with every, and I'm sure you found it too, there were things that like getting stuck on, or but then people, you know, you come together and you kind of figure it out. With you, by the way, like you're really bringing yourself to that team,
Yeah.
and bringing, you know, bringing your feedback, and okay, this is working, and you know, this is where I'm getting stuck. That's
Yeah.
great.
There was one thing where like one day I tried to, because for a while I was just I wasn't able to go to the beach, because it was, you know, California, you're like, it's a big bluff, so you have to walk down to the beach. There is one area though where you can walk on onto the beach, but it's like super far from the sidewalk to the
Yeah.
water. So I tried to walk out like not very far, and I did very badly after that day, and paid the price. And they talked about it, and they were like, you know, we don't think that it's because of like the physical component of it. We think it's because of the vestibular part of it, like the uneven surface that made it harder
Mm.
for you. And like we were essentially able to recreate this, you know, that situation. And I was like, oh my God, like it was like the light bulb, you know, like, yes, that is why. But I hadn't been able to figure that out for
Yeah.
myself, you know. It was just really
Yeah.
they were able to, you know, troubleshoot that as a team, and then, you know, come up with very, very specific ways of targeting it.
Yeah. Yeah. So how far did you get then by the end on the beach?
Well, yes, eventually I got to the water, and
Yeah.
I was like, you know, crying happy tears, because I just like, I don't know, I didn't think it was going to be possible. I was like, I'm going to be up here on the sidewalk watching everyone else. But yeah, I eventually got down to the water. It was
Yeah.
a good day.
That that is amazing, and a testament to your vestibular system improving,
Yeah,
right?
and
Like,
tools that I learned, you know, like
yeah,
pull it little bit.
yeah. Oh, that's great. Now I'm like, okay, so I don't know when the date will be, but we'll have to come back when you're like, I'm going back to work. And it's gonna
Yeah.
be like reaching the water from the sand. a big milestone.
Oh
So
God, yeah, I'll never take it for granted again. Like everything, it's just like a new baby, right? Like everything that I get to experience now, I'm like so much more, I have so much more gratitude for it. And I guess that is one if there's any silver lining to this whole thing, that would be one thing. So
yeah. There doesn't have to be a silver lining
yeah,
to an illness, but
yeah,
but but you're right. It does give you a sense of like, wow, I didn't realize how much I need in my vestibular system, right?
yeah.
And these other things to help me stand upright and things like that. Yeah. And I think you already mentioned kind of a lot of things that you learned about yourself. We use the pie chart. We talk about that a lot. And such a big piece is empowering a person to know and understand their own brain and body. And like you mentioned, oh, you had a lot of tools to be able to get to the water, the edge at the beach. So I imagine you learned a lot about your brain and body. What is one of the things that you learned, or maybe a tool that you learned?
I think one of my favorite tools, which I don't know that it's probably more generalized, but breathing and HRV, I think that has been so huge for me. Just like, if I'm trying to get down to the water and I'm feeling like things are becoming dysregulated, just stop and do some breathing, and it just almost always helps. Honestly, like I do it all the time now, before, after, during things that I know are gonna, like, I had an MRI yesterday and I did the breathing before and after. It's really it's really useful. I don't know why we don't learn this from a young age, but that was one tool that I definitely will not forget. Um, and I think, yeah, just recognizing how to recognize when I am getting like worked up, because I learned that I was very good at like compartmentalizing and ignoring or maybe brushing off my emotions, um, and like learning to like stop, recognize them, acknowledge them, validate them. We did a lot of that in OT, and I think I didn't realize, I knew I was hard on myself, but maybe not knew as hard as I am. I think I'm much harsher than I knew. So to
Mm,
kind of confront those things, and
yeah.
passion, I think that's a big one too.
You're like talking about every major life lesson I've ever had. It was like,
Yeah,
but you're right. These are universal things that go beyond just in the face of an illness,
yeah.
um, but take us through life.
Not forced to really face them though. Like, I mean, I could have just gone on. If I had never had this, I probably would never have had to confront it.
Mm,
Because in my profession, it's very much like a strength, right? To ignore, move on. So I think that was like a big thing for me, to learn how to like recognize how I'm actually feeling, because it has a physiologic counterpart, right? Like if the emotion is this, I'm probably physiologically doing something also, you know. So it's important.
yeah. Important, not easy.
Yeah,
And it, like, some of the things that you might have done are very protective and helpful in your profession too, right? So it's kind of balancing a new way of being and seeing how that works in your life too.
mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Um, just incredible to hear kind of what you've learned about yourself, Alissa. And also, just I want to say thank you for sharing all of that too, because it's really kind of deep and meaningful to who you are as a person. um
yeah,
and um you're out in Arizona. I know you kind of had to make a trek. You weren't scared to go to California in the summer. It was cooler than Arizona,
yeah.
that's for
Like,
sure.
thank God.
And we had had a very mild summer too, so it was like just right. But what might you say to somebody else that could be on the fence about diving into an integrated program like this?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't feel like there was anything to lose, honestly. Like I felt like if I just can get there, like I knew that I would be in good hands and that we would figure it out from there, right? Like it felt a little bit scary because it was kind of like, well, we'll see 6 weeks and we'll just see what happens. But I just knew that I needed to feel like I was being taken care of, like truly taken care of. And I feel like if you can just get yourself there, then from there you just coast, right? You just do the program, and it's actually easy. Like it wasn't hard to do because you're so motivated as it is to get better. It's just the getting there that's somewhat tricky, but for me it wasn't that bad. I have family, they came with me, they did all the work. I kind of like let them do their thing, accepted help, and it wasn't too bad. And then once I was there, yes, like things flared up a bit, but I had a team of people helping me figure it out to get back on track, and did leave in a better place for sure. And like by the end, I was actually not wanting to leave, but also recognizing that it was important that I do, because being in the program is not real life, and you have to like figure out how to apply it to your life. So
Yeah, exactly. You have to live
mm,
and play with these things a little bit.
yeah, yeah.
And there are a lot of folks who have POTS that maybe might feel discouraged that this can't get better. And maybe you felt that way as well. And what might you share with folks?
I think I was scared about that, but
Mm.
that's certainly not true. Like I know of people who have been sick for years and years and years and still find improvements. So I just think, again, it's like, even if you do believe that and you need convincing, what do you have to lose by trying it? I think it's definitely, the brain is so incredible. I mean, we don't even know everything there is to know about it, but it's so plastic, and it's so incredible that it's almost certainly not true. Even though on my worst days, maybe I do say that, but
Yeah.
it's just not true. And that I think you have to, I would say, never stop trying and never give up hope. There's always like a different perspective, a different way of approaching the problem, and maybe it takes 5 different pieces to get better, but like there's always a way, I think, to have like even 1% improvement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, go for the 1%. And now
You look at people
I
like
think,
Katie Ledecky, and it's like she's an Olympic, like, how many medals? 20 time medalist.
yeah,
I mean, yeah, I think
incredible, right?
you keep that in your sights and never give up. And it might take you 5 years. I don't know. It might take 7 years, but I don't plan to give up. And I think that's an important message, is like, even if you're having one bad day where you believe that, just know that it's not true. Like, it's not true that you cannot get better.
Yeah. That's a really great and powerful message. I also, because we have a lot of clinicians, in fact, somebody asked on here, where can I keep learning about these things? So I'll have to share with other clinicians where you can keep learning, because certainly there are a lot of resources for POTS. But what might you share with other clinicians about POTS or about rehabilitation?
Man, I think the biggest thing that I've learned now is that it's so nuanced, and it's really important to find somebody who's comfortable with treating the condition. And I think, um, there's, as we were talking about in the beginning, there's a lot of protocols out there, but they're not always relevant to the person. And so I think that it's just like find your experts. That's find your team, build your team.
Yeah.
And for a lot of clinicians, that might mean like resourcing out or consulting someone else.
Yeah.
I think the biggest message, but also like I do think that it's a vastly underdiagnosed condition from what I've seen. I can even recall patients that I saw in the emergency room, or maybe like I couldn't figure out what was going on with them in the ICU. And I think now back and I'm like, it was almost certainly autonomic dysfunction and I missed it. So I think that it does need more attention. And I think, the population of people who have this is only increasing, sadly. So, I do think education is a big component, especially if you're a primary care doc or a PT, anything really. I mean, even myself as an ICU doctor, I see it. So it's, and I
You're
think
so right.
and I think the gaslighting thing is another thing I want to highlight. I I hate to mention it, but I myself have had some of that, even, clinician to clinician, people telling me, well, you're just stressed out or you're just, this or that. And I think that is a real problem. I think believe your patients. That would be the other thing I would say.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, a thousand times over.
Yeah.
And I think actually to hear that, because I mean, we hear that all of the time for people with POTS, where they're told, "Oh, you're just anxious." I think particularly if you're a female, but just for everybody.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm anxious because I pass out when I stand up.
Yeah.
Like of course I'm anxious. What is happening to me? And as folks are really agreeing with that in the comments too. It's so damaging to the patient. It kind of cuts off that communication and two-way street as well.
Yeah. And I think it leads to like delay of diagnosis and, and lack of want on the patient's side to seek help, because every time they go seek help, they're just told, go to a psychiatrist. Or I think that should be like part of the treatment, but it's not all of it. So
Right. Yeah, don't ignore
yeah.
your emotional
Yeah.
world that has happened with this illness, but yeah, get all of the pieces together.
Yeah.
Um,
And I do think, I'm hoping that it's getting better. I think
yeah.
there is more and more awareness with the COVID thing, because a lot of people are developing after COVID. And so I am hopeful that things will change for the better.
Yeah, me too.
I plan to be a warrior when I'm so.
I was gonna say, I think like just doing this interview, so much of what we do is advocacy. Just get the word out. Just get it out for clinicians, for people who are experiencing these symptoms, so that they can get good care. So thank you for being an advocate alongside of us.
Yes. And
Yeah.
I plan to do more, I hope, in the future. So
Yeah. That's awesome. Gosh, Alissa, I feel so grateful for you sharing your story and what you've learned with a lot of folks who will catch this video, and we'll be following along and cheering on every 1% that you get.
thank you so much. You guys have an incredible team. And I really do hope that I get to come back soon to do like a little check-in. So maybe you'll see me soon.
I know we will not protest that. It would be so fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, somebody else says, Alissa, I'm from Arizona. I'm going to share this with my doctors. So
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
So that's wonderful. So yeah, share this far and wide. And thank you again, Alissa, for coming on and doing this.
Welcome.
All
All
right.
right. Take
Bye.
Bye, everyone.